Hello and welcome to the thought for the day for Saturday the 6th of June. My name's Pam Cribbin and today we're looking at the first half of Psalm 71 verses 1 to 13. We're not told who wrote this psalm, but it's thought that it was probably an elderly man, someone who was possibly suffering from ill health and someone who had enemies. It was probably written during or after the exile, which was the time when the Jewish people were taken away from their own country and taken captive to Babylon. In other words, life hadn't always gone according to plan for them, and I wonder if that sounds familiar. I think we see in this psalm a mixture of the writer's complete confidence in God and his desperate plea to God to rescue him now in his current situation. I'll read the first 3 verses. In you, O Lord, I have taken refuge. Let me never be put to shame. In your righteousness rescue me and deliver me. Turn your ear to me and save me. Be my rock of refuge to which I can always go. Give the command to save me, for you are my rock and my fortress. So life is clearly difficult for the writer, and he needs God to hear his prayer and save him. At the beginning he says, in you, O Lord, I have taken refuge. He knows where he is. He also says, you are my rock and my fortress. He's stating a fact. But he also says, be my rock of refuge, to which I can always go. Why does he need to ask God this when he's already sure that God is his rock and refuge? Is it because, like us sometimes, he knows the truth about God in his head, but he actually wants to experience it now, in his current situation? Maybe that's the difference between theology, when we know about God, to a relationship where we actually know and experience God in our everyday lives and current situation. Maybe not in a tangible way, but in the experience of peace that passes all understanding, the knowledge that God even loves me and is concerned about this situation now. And in verses 5 to 8, we see that the writer has good reason to trust God now, because he can look back to the very beginning of his life and see how God has been with him. He's relied on him even from his birth. This is something I can identify with a little bit. My mother tells me that when I was born, it was several minutes before I started to breathe. She tells me how my dad was praying while the doctor worked on me, and eventually, as you can see, I did start to breathe. So I can also say that I've relied on God from my birth. Can we look back on our lives and remember times when God has been our hope? The writer says he's been a sign to many. It sounds as if other people have been influenced in their own lives by this man's life of faith. Now, however, he seems to feel his strength going. He's surrounded by people who are trying to kill him, and it even seems to his enemies as if God has forsaken him. Does it feel like that to you now? Does it seem as if you've known God with you in the past, but right now you're feeling weak and surrounded by, if not physical enemies, then many other challenges that seem overwhelming? Whether it's ill health, loneliness, the seeming lack of anything positive in the news, uncertainty about the future, or something else. Perhaps you feel people are even saying of you, God has forsaken him or her, or you might even be tempted to feel that yourself. The writer knows, however, that even now in this situation he can cry out to God, do not be far from me, my God. Come quickly, God, to help me, knowing for certain that God will hear his prayer. In the end, it will be his enemies who perish, not him. We can also say the same. However our circumstances might be now, whatever challenge we feel overwhelmed by, even if we do have physical enemies who are out to kill us, we can call out to God, knowing he will hear us. I find it interesting that the writer didn't take God for granted. Despite all the times God had shown up in the past, he didn't just presume it and say, God's got things in control, so I don't need to worry. He still made passionate pleas with God. Why? Because I think he was being real about where he was, and so can we be. Verse 14 belongs to the second half of Psalm 71, which Graham is going to continue with on Monday. However, I'm going to sneak it into today's thought as well, as the note for us to end on. It says, "As for me, I shall always have hope." Thank you.